What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Bryce, and today I'm reading chapter 42 of the Parker Inheritance. Let's begin. Chapter 42, James Parker, 1957 to 1986. When people looked at James Parker sitting behind his large mahogany desk in his high-rise office, they always saw what they wanted to see, what he wanted them to see. A successful engineer, a shrewd businessman, a loyal Army veteran, a rich white man. The truth of the matter was, no one knew the real James Parker. Every meaningful detail about his real life remained hidden away, like the contents of a safety deposit box that even he had lost the key to. When he first joined the Army, he kept it to himself, convinced that someone would surely realize he wasn't who he claimed to be. As time passed, he became increasingly comfortable in his new skin. He stopped hesitating when people referred to him by his new name. He resisted flinching every time a police car passed. He mastered how to bury his pity every time he asked a young black man to shine his shoes. After Parker finished his military service, he used the GI Bill to earn a degree in civil engineering from Colorado School of Mines, as far from the South as he could get. Then he moved to Denver to work for the city engineering department. The work was good and the pay was fair. But Parker wanted more than just a paycheck. He wanted to be his own boss. He convinced two of his co-workers, to quit their jobs and form a design firm with him. As the company prospered, Parker branched out into new areas. He eventually bought out his partners, making him the majority owner, president, and CEO of his company. When he was 35 in real life, not on his birth certificate, he made his first corporate acquisition when Parker Holdings, Inc. purchased a small construction company. After meeting with his new employees, he turned to Beatrix Halliday. I think Holiday. Beatrix Halliday, his longtime assistant, and asked, "What do you think they're saying about me?" He expected her to say they're excited or scared or worried for their jobs. She replied, "Caleb Down in accounting thinks you're the grandson of a mob boss. And Mary Alice in the secretarial pool thinks you're saving up to run for governor." That made him chuckle. Given his history, he'd never become the governor of Colorado. Too many background checks were required. "And what do you think?" he asked. Mrs. Halliday smiled politely, readjusted her spectacles, and said, "I'd be happy to answer that for you as soon as I'm ready to retire." Beatrix Halliday had followed him from his job with the city to become the fourth ever employee in Parker's business empire. Her business card said executive secretary, but she was part mother, part assistant, part gopher, part confidant. She knew when to restock his office refrigerator with Dr. Pepper and the exact time he liked to eat lunch every day. As Parker Holdings grew, James Parker became more important in the business world. Colleagues asked him to join important organizations. Donors asked him to support various charities. The mayor began to call on him for financial advice. And then the governor, and then United States senators and representatives. He had a few friends at the beginning of his engineering career. But the more successful he became, the more fearful he grew of someone discovering his true identity and exposing him. So he slowly pulled away from anyone who ever tried to befriend him, like a starving man hoarding his last scraps of bread. Eventually, Mrs. Halliday was the closest person to a friend that Parker had, which wasn't close at all. But Parker didn't forget everything about his true identity as his wealth and power grew. He remembered Marion Allen, how the man had tried to destroy him, had threatened to destroy Siobhan. Marion Allen had forced him to flee the only people he ever loved. He had already died at this point, but Parker didn't care. As far as he was concerned, all the Allens were to blame for what happened on that August night in 1957. Parker ordered Mrs. Holliday to develop a file on the Allens. He wanted to know everything about their businesses, their property, their investments. He hired a private investigator to dig into their personal lives. They were surprisingly easy to destroy. He started with Allen Textiles Inc., buying up enough shares to oust the family from control. Then he ruined their land development company, their accounting firm. Over the course of 10 years, they went from wealthy to filing for bankruptcy. Tough. Eventually, Parker purchased his eighth company, a large tech firm, and for the eighth time he turned to Mrs. Holliday, and asked, "What do you think the employees at the new company are saying about me?" Beatrice Holliday patted her gray hair and said, "The boys in the warehouse think you from the CIA, and the ladies at the front desk think you are a descendant of the Queen of England. What do you think?" Instead of offering up her usual smile, Beatrice Holliday cleared her throat and said, "Ask me again in 2 weeks. I'm putting in my notice. I'm retiring." James Parker didn't respond, so she kept talking. "Gary quit selling insurance 3 years ago. I have grandbabies to spoil." She removed her glasses and wiped her eyes. "It's time." "If it's about the money, it's not," she said. "It's about my family, friends. It's about living life, spending time with the people you love while you still can." Then Mrs. Holliday rose from her desk, took a step toward her boss and said, "Maybe it's time for you as well. You know where she lives. Talk to her." Beatrice Holliday didn't just know about the Allens in Lambert, South Carolina. She had seen the briefings from private investigators, the newsletters from the Silver Spring School District, the clippings from the Washington Post, items that even the most careful of men couldn't completely hide away. She knew what he wanted the most, whom he wanted the most. "You know where she lives," she repeated, "so try. You owe it to her, and you owe it to yourself." James Parker had kept tabs on Siobhan Washington throughout the years. She lived in Silver Spring, Maryland. Now, the librarian at the same elementary school she had been a teacher for many years. He knew she had attended her high school reunion 3 years prior and the dedication of the Enoch Washington tennis courts in Vickers Park a year ago. He had known about the dedication for some time, but couldn't bring himself to make a donation. As far as he was concerned, Enoch Washington was as much to blame for what happened as Marion Allen. Siobhan had been married but was now single. She had returned to using Washington as her last name. Parker had wanted to contact her so many times over the past 29 years, but he was never ready, was never powerful enough, rich enough. He was always needed one more deal, one more zero added to the end of his bank account. She deserved only the best, and he had yet to achieve it. But he was also scared, terrified even. He had become a different man. What if she no longer loved him? Or what if she asked him to change, to become the man he used to be? What was he supposed to do then? But Mrs. Holliday's words had emboldened him. They gave him the permission he'd been seeking for his entire life. He found himself booking a flight to Dulles International Airport. He couldn't sleep the night before, not on the flight. Nor on the flight. He couldn't sleep the night before, nor on the flight. What was he supposed to do? Just walk up to her after that many years? He rented a car and drove the 30 miles from the airport to Silver Spring. It was early afternoon when he reached her school, Black kids and white kids climbed on the monkey bars and played on the swings. Black teachers and white teachers chatted with one another. It was a different world. Sweat poured down his back as he entered the main office. He cleared his throat once, then twice, then asked, "Is Miss Washington in today?" The woman behind the counter nodded as she picked up the phone. "Do you want me to call her?" "No, wait." He couldn't talk to her now. He wasn't ready. It had been 29 years, and he still wasn't ready. He reached for a sheet of paper. If I could just leave a note for her. He uncapped his pen, then hesitated again. What could he say? Should he sign it as Reggie? He hadn't used that name in so long, he could barely remember how to spell it. He glanced at the receptionist. Is there a park nearby? Or a landmark? Or a Acorn Park? The woman said, "It's a small park, just off the highway. I can give you directions." Parker nodded, and then wrote, "Only one person was going to St. Eve's. Will you meet me at Acorn Park at 5 o'clock? James Parker watched as Siobhan approached. He rose from his seat slowly. It was cool but not cold. He already planned to give her his jacket if she were chilly, if she would take it. She hesitated when she saw him, then continued onto the gazebo. She looked different, but also the same. Her hair was shorter, she had gained weight, but hadn't they both? The glasses were new. It was amazing how much she looked like her mother. She stopped a few feet away from him. Is it really? She began. Hello, Siobhan. He wanted to touch her hand, her skin. He wanted to confirm that she was real and standing before him. Reggie, she said. He was 18 all over again. What happened to you? She continued. I heard you had died. Maybe you should sit down, he said. I need to walk. I need to move. Helps me think. She started off, but stopped when she noticed he wasn't following. No, come with me. Parker nodded, then fell into step beside her. Siobhan met Parker again the next day, and the day after that. He was supposed to return to Denver for a series of meetings. He canceled them. He cleared his schedule for the next week. Then the month afterward, in the mornings while Siobhan was at school, he sat in the conference calls with his board members and employees, existing clients, and the new customers. During lunch, he read all the books she raved about. A Wrinkle in Time, M.C. Higgins, The Great, and her favorite, Western Game. His afternoons and evenings were reserved solely for her. You should let me buy a new bracelet. And he said one night as they finished dinner at an upscale restaurant in D.C., a woman of your beauty shouldn't wear something so juvenile. But I like it, she said, glancing at her wrist. The aluminum bracelet was scratched and weathered. He had been surprised and even happy to see it. But these feelings were soon eclipsed by shame. He had been so poor back then, so powerless, so insignificant. Now he could give Siobhan anything she wanted. She could leave that bracelet in the past, along with everything else. My mother noticed that I started wearing it again, she continued. When she asked why, I told her my new friend liked how it looked on my arm. Now she's all eager to meet you. Parker hadn't even known her mother was still alive a month ago. She stayed in an assisted living facility not far away. Siobhan saw her 3 times a week. Every time she visited, she felt a pang for his own grandmother. Never got a chance to see her again before she died. He reached for her hand, and she allowed him to take it. I could see how introducing me to your mother could be problematic. Could be very problematic. He said, problematic? That's a polite way of putting it. She laughed a little. I don't even know what to call you. You'll never be James Parker to me. It's only a name. I don't think so. A name helps to define who we are. It reminds us of our history. That's facts. Is that why you went back to using Washington? She nodded. She hadn't talked much about her marriage, and he hadn't pressed her on it. He felt he didn't have the right to ask certain questions. You know you can't stay here forever, she said. You eventually have to go back home. He was in negotiations to acquire another company. He had done as much as he could from his hotel suite, but he needed to return to his office to finalize the purchase. The real world was at their doorstep, and it was dangerously close to barging in. What if you came with me? He asked. For the winter break? No. He squeezed her hand. Forever. Siobhan stared at her dessert, a chocolate mousse covered in strawberries and whipped cream. Parker had already finished his, but it was richer than he had anticipated. How could we even make that work? How? We'd find a way. And what would life be like for me there? With you? You'll be my... He struggled for the words. Girlfriend didn't sound right. Not big enough. He should have bought her a ring. She should be his fiancée. It'll be fine. And would you be okay with dating someone who's black? She asked. Parker didn't answer. Siobhan pulled her hand away. What do you want me to do, Reggie? Pretend I'm someone else? No, that's not what you do. As she held up her brown hands, her bracelet slid down her arm. All of us can't pass. There are creams you can take. Medicine. Her face twisted into a frown. Or worse, a look of disgust. I'm 46 years old. I'm not gonna change who I am now. She pushed her plate away. I won't change who I am. Not after what I've been through. Facts. I'm sorry, he quickly replied. Of course you don't have to change. My board, they will be fine. I'll deal with any fallout. I mean, there will be some financial repercussions. Do you seriously think you'll lose clients if you start dating a black woman? Don't be so naive. Of course I'll lose work. There's still a lot of races out there. Then why do business with them in the first place? It's not that simple, he said. Sometimes I don't even know their beliefs until they make an off-color joke about black people. Parker took a long drink of water. This was going all wrong. Why are we arguing about this now? He asked. We don't have to decide anything today. Why don't you just quit? She asked. You have more than enough money. Stay here. I can't. I worked too hard to build what I have. He thought for a second. Plus, it wouldn't hurt my employees. Yes, he told himself. That sounds better. Her eyes hardened. Speaking of those employees, how many of them are black? I don't have any idea. I don't keep count. I'm sure human resources could. What about your board of directors, she asked. Your vice presidents? Any of the executives in your company? How many are black? Siobhan, 2, 1. He took another drink of water. Oh, I see. Change happens slowly. Facts. But you're in a position to facilitate that change. Every day I tell my students that the world is getting better, but I look at you and wonder if I'm lying to them. Ouch. It is better. I'm proof. Yes, by pretending to be something you aren't. She sighed. Let's be honest. You aren't pretending anymore, are you? Siobhan, that's not fair. Do I have to lie about who I am if I move to Denver with you? What am I supposed to say when people ask me how we met? What I call you the wrong name in public? What if I call you the wrong name in public? She crossed her arms. What am I supposed to tell my mother? Choking on air, my bad. Please, he said. looking around. Keep your voice down. He motioned to the waiter. Where's the bill? He mumbled. We shouldn't be talking about this here. Parker paid for their meal, then ushered Siobhan outside. He handed the valet his ticket and waited for the car. Did I do something wrong? He whispered. I don't understand why you're so upset. She wrapped her shawl tightly around her. Today is the anniversary of my daddy's death. He didn't even see me graduate from college. She looked at Parker. He was never the same after we left Lambert. Most of that was his fault. Too much drinking, too much pride, but I also can't help but blame the world, at least a little. He needed a second chance, but no one was willing to give it to him. Perkins wouldn't write him any letters of recommendation, and my mother, bless her heart, could only put up with him for so long. The valet pulled up with a car, but she didn't move toward it. I guess that's why I'm so mad. He had a tenth of what you have now, a 20th, a 1,000th, and he still reached out to people worse off than him. Or do you remember all the meals he fed you when you didn't have anything to eat? Parker took her hand. I can do better, Siobhan, I promise. She nodded, then pulled away and walked to the car. Siobhan remained silent for most of their drive back to Silver Spring. Finally, she asked, You don't drink Coca-Cola, do you? He gave a half snort, half laugh. What are you talking about? You're sweet. It's the biggest hotel room I've ever seen. The refrigerator is stocked full of every drink imaginable. Expensive water, fancy juices I can't even pronounce. Every type of soda ever made. Everything except Coke. His hands tightened on the wheel. No, I don't prefer it. When's the last time you tasted it? He sped up, his eyes staring straight ahead. Oh my God, you haven't drunk it since 1957? You're still mad at Chip Douglas, aren't you? Parker exploded. His friends destroyed our lives. They weren't his friends, Reggie. He helped us get us out of town, remember? Sorry, I was too busy running for my own life. She shook her head. I can't believe you still hate that city so much. It's all consuming. Her mouth dropped open for a moment. The Allens. I heard their company had filed for bankruptcy. They lost out on a lot of contracts. One of their business had been bought out. She pointed her finger at him. It was you, wasn't it? How can you have any sympathy for the Allens, he asked, after what they did to your father, to us? A lot of people depended on those jobs, and you stole them from the city. People can move. There are other jobs. Oh, and I guess they can pretend to be white, too. Ooh, bird. Siobhan, what else do you hate? My father? Parker turned on the radio. He didn't want to talk about this. He wasn't mentally equipped to talk about it. Not now. Maybe not ever. She turned the volume down. Reggie, answer me. If he had just let us be together, Parker began. I can't believe I'm hearing this. You're just like him. She picked up her purse from the floor. Stop the car. Siobhan, now. Parker pulled into a gas station parking lot, but kept the car running. A man pumping gas glanced in their direction. Parker flipped down his visor so he wouldn't have to see him. I've known you've been alive for a month. She said. I said he said. That's what she said. Tell me the truth. You've known where I was since. He sighed. I've always known. The way I see it, you've had 29 years to find me, to prove my father was wrong when he said we didn't belong together. And you had the audacity to say it's his fault for keeping us apart. Siobhan reached over and touched Parker's cheek. Her hands were so soft. Whatever happened to that boy who gave me word puzzles, who played with the kids in the park? Where's the boy I used to love? She pulled away, then opened her door. I'm sorry, but I can't be with a man who hates the world as much as you do. Wait, he said as she stepped out of the car. Where are you going? I'll call a cab. Siobhan, good night, James, she said, closing her door. He watched her walk into the convenience store. A few minutes later, a yellow taxi pulled up front. Skirt, skirt. She didn't look in his direction as she stepped in and rode away. The next morning, Parker was awakened by the phone ringing on his nightstand. An envelope was waiting for him downstairs. Inside was a letter, 3 pages long, and a bracelet. He read the letter twice. Then he packed and drove himself to the airport. He paid a ransom to catch the next direct flight to Denver. At the gate, he spun the bracelet around his finger. It was smaller than he remembered, lighter. He had slaved over it in his shop class. He had wanted to give her something she could wear with a little suspicion. That was why he put love on the inside. The message was just for her. Across from his seat, stood a black trash can. He could drop the bracelet in the garbage, and that would be the last of Reggie Bradley. Tough. He would truly be dead. I gotta put some emphasis on that. Like everyone believed him to be. Like Siobhan now believed him to be. It's not funny. He walked over to the trash can, peered in, and tried to will himself to drop the bracelet, to be rid of Reggie, of Siobhan, forever. But after a few seconds, he slipped the bracelet into his jacket pocket, where it would be safe. Then he boarded the plane and went home. So that was chapter 42. So tomorrow I'll be reading chapter 43, and that's about it. Peace out.